Before the story begins, take a second and imagine this. A lonely man stands at the edge of a dusty road, waiting for the one person who might change his life forever, but when the wagon finally arrives, the woman who steps down is nothing like he imagined. And what happens next will change both of them in ways neither could have dreamed. If you enjoy powerful stories about hope, second chances, and unexpected love, make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel so you never miss stories like this. Now settle in, because this one might stay with you long after it ends. The wind moved slowly across the wide prairie, carrying dust and the smell of dry grass. Jacob Carter stood beside the wooden fence of his small ranch, staring down the lonely dirt road that stretched for miles across the open land. The sun was already high in the sky, but Jacob hadn't moved from that spot since morning. Most men in the nearby town thought Jacob was strange. He rarely spoke, rarely laughed, and almost never visited town unless he had to sell cattle or buy supplies. Life had hardened him early. His parents died when he was young, and the ranch had fallen into his hands before he was ready. Years of drought, endless work, and long silent nights had turned him into what people called a loner. But deep down, Jacob wasn't cold. He was just tired of disappointment. And that was exactly why he had ordered a mail-order bride. He hadn't done it out of romance. He had done it out of quiet desperation. The ranch needed a family if it was ever going to survive. And maybe, just maybe, his heart needed one too. The letter he received months ago described a woman named Clara Whitmore. She wrote that she was hardworking, kind, and looking for a new life in the West. She said she believed in second chances. She said she didn't mind the hard work of ranch life. Jacob had read that letter a dozen times. In his mind, he imagined someone small, gentle, maybe a little shy. Someone who would smile softly and bring warmth into the quiet house that had felt empty for so many years. That morning, the stage wagon was finally due to arrive. Jacob adjusted his hat and stared into the distance. Then finally, he saw it. A small cloud of dust appeared on the road. The wagon. His heart began to beat faster. As the wagon rolled closer, he wiped his hands on his worn jeans. He wasn't used to being nervous, but suddenly his stomach felt tight. The wagon creaked to a stop in front of the ranch gate. The driver climbed down first, stretching his back. "You Jacob Carter?" the driver asked. Jacob nodded. "Got someone here for you." Jacob looked toward the back of the wagon. And then, the woman stepped down. For a moment, Jacob thought there had been some kind of mistake. She was tall. Very tall. And broad-shouldered. Easily twice his size. Her dress stretched tightly across her strong frame, and her boots hit the ground with solid confidence. Her face was round, her cheeks flushed from the long journey, and a thick braid of dark hair hung over her shoulder. She looked nothing like the small, delicate woman Jacob had imagined. She looked strong. Powerful. Almost intimidating. Jacob blinked. The woman looked at him for a long moment, then smiled nervously. "Jacob Carter?" she asked softly. Her voice was gentle. Surprisingly gentle. Jacob cleared his throat. "Yeah, that's me." She extended her hand. "I'm Clara." Her hand was warm. Firm. Real. Jacob suddenly realized the wagon driver was watching them with amusement. "Well," the driver chuckled, climbing back onto the seat. "Looks like delivery successful." With that, the wagon rolled away, leaving the two strangers standing awkwardly in the dust. For a moment neither spoke. Jacob rubbed the back of his neck. "You, had a long trip?" Clara nodded. 3 days. Silence again. Jacob couldn't stop noticing how large she was. Not just large, but solid. Strong. Like someone who had spent her life doing hard work. Finally she looked down slightly, her smile fading. "If you're disappointed," she said quietly, "you can say so. Jacob frowned. What do you mean? She took a breath. Most men expect someone, smaller. The words hung in the air. Jacob suddenly realized something. This woman had probably seen that reaction before. Many times. And for the first time, he looked at her differently. Not as the woman he imagined, but as the woman standing in front of him. Tired from travel. Trying to be brave. Hoping she wasn't about to be rejected. Jacob straightened. Well, he said slowly, ranch work ain't exactly easy. Clara raised an eyebrow. No, it isn't. He gestured toward the house. You hungry? Her eyes lit up just a little. Very. That was how it began. The first few weeks were awkward. They were two strangers learning to share a life neither fully understood yet. Clara turned out to be the hardest worker Jacob had ever seen. She lifted feed sacks that most men struggled with. She repaired fences, hauled water, and helped with cattle like she'd been doing it her whole life. But that wasn't what surprised Jacob the most. At night, she cooked meals that filled the house with warmth. She laughed easily. She talked about books she loved, music from the town she grew up in, and stories about her younger siblings. Slowly, the ranch began to feel different. Less empty. One evening, after a long day fixing a broken fence, Jacob sat on the porch steps watching the sunset. Clara sat beside him, her large frame creaking the wooden step. You ever regret it? She asked suddenly. What? Sending for me. Jacob thought about it. Then he shook his head. No. She looked surprised. Really? Jacob glanced at her. You ever regret coming? Clara looked out across the land. For the first time in my life, she said softly, I feel like I belong somewhere. Months passed. The ranch improved. The cattle grew healthier. The house became filled with life. And somewhere along the way, something changed between them. It wasn't sudden. It wasn't dramatic. It was quiet. One night during a storm, when lightning shook the sky, Clara reached for his hand. And Jacob didn't pull away. From that day forward, the loner rancher wasn't alone anymore. Years later, people in town would talk about them. About the quiet rancher and the big woman who arrived on a wagon. But what they didn't understand was this. Jacob hadn't received the bride he imagined. He received the partner he needed. And sometimes, the life you never expected becomes the one that saves you. So if this story touched your heart, remember to like the video and subscribe to the channel for more powerful stories about love, resilience, and the surprising ways life brings people together. Because sometimes the greatest blessings arrive in forms we never expected.